Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. I'm here today with Nick Grinberg. He runs GMD Digital, who are now officially Australia's largest digital agency. So pretty excited to have them on. They've had meteoric growth over the last 12 months and have had a really interesting career getting to this point. So I'm excited to hear about his journey, about his background, and what has allowed him to really get that growth and really grow. Because in our previous conversations, he's told me some really interesting things. So, Nick, before we get started, where in the world are you right now, and what is your favorite food?
We're, by the way, we're the largest independent digital agency. So
There we
the big networks are slightly bigger than us, several billion dollars bigger. But it's a really good question. I am in Cremorne in Victoria, which is Australia's smallest suburb, fun fact. And my favorite food, steak.
Oh, dude, medium. What
Like
kind
a
of?
good, like medium rare, nice ribeye. Yeah.
Beautiful. So tell me about your journey, dude. What is your cultural background first? I think let's get started with that.
So I am a Ukrainian immigrant. Came here when I was like 6 years old. So I guess much like any immigrant, like my parents' main goal was to bring myself to Australia. I'm an only child. I guess so. When we arrived, sort of pretty apparent some of the differences between growing up in the former USSR versus seeing what Australian kids are like. So I guess from the outset, I kind of saw that with the way my parents raised me, it was very much around driving performance. So, for example, when my mum and dad went to school, there was no such thing as participation awards, with sport or academics. You either win or you don't win. Kids in school got ranked from first to last. So it wasn't almost it didn't in obviously in Australian culture it's very much we're all about equality and now more so than ever this political correctness piece, whereas in sort of former USSR people didn't give a fuck. They just it was what it was. You won or you didn't win. You performed or you didn't perform. So that kind of
Very
gave me a
binary kind of
different
nature to it.
mentality. I guess that's kind of always sort of predisposed me to something like business, to something like starting an agency.
Okay. So coming up in that kind of family dynamic, what do you do after you finish your schooling?
I went into I busted my ass for a high enter score. Well, it wasn't worth shit to me in the end because I didn't end up. I went into a degree, nutrition and dietetics, and I didn't do anything with it. I took a year off to try start an online business called My Retailer, which didn't really go anywhere. But after that year, I kind of knew that, hey, digital, this is awesome. This is going to be huge. And so once I finished my course, I started kicking around, trying to had an online auctions website, had a shoe store online, did a lot of affiliate marketing, and that's kind of was my start in digital.
Okay. And how do you learn along the way? Do you bring in mentors, or what was your process for understanding how this whole thing works?
Yeah, it's a really good question. At the start, I just learned from anyone and everyone. I just read a lot of blogs, read a lot of books. I had really smart people point me to resources that I needed. So my uncle's a pretty prominent Australian business person. He kind of said, hey, seems like you're getting into business. Read Think and Grow Rich. Read How to Win Friends and Influence People. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So that was super helpful. But as I kind of got, further on in my career, the way I learn is I look at people that have done what I want to do, and I'll go and ask them for advice.
Okay, that's very correct. So, when did the agency come back? Because you said you're doing this affiliate stuff. Did you keep running that affiliate stuff, or when did you stop and make a switch?
No, I sort of kept the AF stuff going for about like 2 to 3 years after uni. But anyone that sort of has done AF knows that it's not the most healthy of lifestyles to live, to sort of park your life behind a computer. And it's kind of a bit of a feast or famine. Like you can really do well, if you get onto the right network and the right offer and at the right time. But I don't know, I'm more of a people person. I get my energy from interacting with people. So ultimately, I went to work at an agency because I'm like, I felt I had the credibility because I was like, a lot of the time I was, doing bigger AF spends than, some of Australia's larger businesses. And so I'm like, look, I kind of want the people piece. So I went to work at an agency. And then, that's kind of where I got my agency chops from.
Okay, so then when did this own agency for yourself, GMG, start?
So I worked at an agency called Web Dynamic for 2 years. Met my now business partner there, and we were there for 2 years. And I remember I was the guy bringing in the sales, and he was delivering. He was actually we were doing. He was really good at search engine optimization. And, so I'd sell something and I would just give it to him to deliver. And then I think it was like one time we had an annual review and we both asked for a bit more money and didn't get it and said, well, fuck it. Like, we're just going to go do this ourselves.
So you guys
don't get me wrong, great place to work though. But that was I remember that at the time, that was the kind of like the sort of the divergent path.
Knowing what you know now, and if you know you're hiring really great people, if they were to come to you with a similar proposition, how would you treat that? How would you make sure that you retain that top quality talent?
It's a really good question. Well, I will retain it if it's best for both of us for them to be retained. If someone has, just a sea of opportunity elsewhere, it's not. I kind of don't have the moral compass to be like, I'm just going to manipulate into staying within, GMG. It's really all about understanding where people want to go, and a simple, I guess, it's not simple, but, the concept is you say, cool, where is it that you want to go? If GMG is the best vehicle to help you get there, then I'll articulate why that's the case. And then, hopefully they stay on that journey with us for as long as it's useful for them. But, just as simply, if it's a case of someone, we've had people leave our walls and go on to be, start their own businesses or, get really prestigious roles at larger agencies. And that's something that's really cool with me. Like, I want to celebrate that because, you can't really force people to do anything. So, I consider that a win where, someone's been in our ecosystem for a bit, added a lot of value, and, a set time in the future, they depart. That's cool with me.
That's cool. Do you think if anything went differently with that conversation, you'd stay with that other agency much longer yourself?
Sorry, say that again, mate. I missed that.
Yeah, if anything went different with the other agency, if they said, yes, we'll give you the extra money, would you have stayed much longer, or is that just a temporary measure?
You know what? I potentially. I actually got offered more, like a job at Deloitte Digital, which was like a pretty, like they do a lot of really good work. And I remember like it sort of being a bit of a coin toss as to like whether, John and I start this agency or I go to Deloitte Digital, and like, it's very hard to say what I would have done. I mean, I reckon if Web Dynamic had given John and I the money we'd asked for when we'd asked for it, we may have stayed for a little bit longer. But I like to think that this was probably an inevitability eventually.
Yeah. That's cool. What drives you in the business?
Sorry, say that again?
What's your driving force? Why do you do this?
It's a really good question. I'm going to try to give you not a bullshit answer. I mean, obviously, like personal prosperity. I want, myself, my family, my network to do well. I want to be able to, give a good life to people around me and generally make my immediate world better. But I guess the other thing is like, the main reason the agency exists is, our whole remit is like we want to make the digital world measurably better. So like, cause like I was in dietetics and I'm like this was borderline depressing. Like the digital saved me. I'm like, shit, like you can make money selling shit on eBay. You can make money promoting, ebooks on how to get your dog to not shit on the carpet. Like you can do that. That's incredible. And wow, you can do all these other things. You can do online gaming, online dating, or all this stuff. And so I guess it really motivates me to be a big part of, like Australian businesses and their digital growth. I just think that's really fucking exciting. In this particular, in agency land, that is.
That's cool. When you started the agency, what was your process, and do you have was there a strategic process you guys brought out to actually grow the business, get the talent, do the work yourselves, or
it changes, man. It growing from $500,000 to $1 million, $1 million to 5 to 20 to 100. It all changes, like, because the problems you have at first stage.
Did you just go 0 to 100?
Oh no! I wish. We're nowhere near 100 yet.
It sounds like the process that Mark Ford talks about.
Oh yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not familiar with it, but it's just different challenges. I mean, and the funny thing is I've built processes and had people and systems that was like, yeah, that's awesome for the 5 to 10, but that same stuff potentially works against you when you're going 10 to 20.
Let's start at the beginning then. What kind of stuff did you bring in when you first started the business, and then how's that changed?
So originally it was just John and I, and we were kind of like almost the perfect startup pair because we didn't need anyone else. We didn't need to raise funds because I knew I could sell and John knew he could deliver. So, actually, like, our mutual friend Dimmer knocked up our first website in 24 hours and we were away. GMG stands for Google Maps Guru. So we only did Google Maps optimization at the time. And so I was just pure like effort, just making 40 cold calls or 40 to 80 cold calls a day, just trying to get businesses on board, doing mass email outs to the Yellow Pages database. And then we added some people, we added account managers, we added salespeople, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't just about sheer effort. It was, you started to have to introduce some leadership and start saying, well, hey, you got to rescind some control and help people do things for you. And then as you grow, all of a sudden you back, it's less and less about you as a producer and more about you as a leader. So I've learned some really interesting lessons on human beings and leadership and made a shit ton of mistakes. And that's kind of when I think about my career development and personal development, it's pretty much more about, becoming a leader as opposed to sort of, being really technically good at digital marketing. Because I have smarter people now in my agency that are just so much better that I can ever hope to be at that.
Okay. You mentioned a lot there about cold outreach for your sales. Mm-hmm. Is that your primary sales process, or how do you guys approach sales?
Now?
Yeah, now.
Okay. I mean, present day, we've got a bit of a reputation. So given that our sort of target market is kind of your sort of enterprise level of clients, we've been at this for, Do you
want to stop you for a second there?
Sure.
You're working with enterprise now, but you said initially you worked with actually anyone, by sounds of things.
Yeah, small business.
When did that shift occur?
It wasn't like an on-off switch. It was more like a dial, if that makes sense. We started winning larger clients. We started getting a reputation in organic search. We started winning larger clients around, maybe year 2, year 3 of the business. We account managed those clients really well. Those clients started asking us, oh, hey, can you do this and can you do that and can you do design and can you do paid media and can you do, full campaign creative? And then we kind of grew through them. And at one point, we realized, hey, our rates, our economics, our people can't service the sort of the small business clients that we used to have. And we kind of had a natural churn of those clients. And, we found that, when we spoke to people or when we attended events, we talked about, what it is that made our agency unique and the value we could add. We attracted more and more of that. And it wasn't straight away small business to enterprise. There's a big band in the middle. But we found ourselves progressively working with kind of, clients with a larger spend or with more of an appetite for innovation and, with a more focus towards digital. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. It's more of that natural progression. Just as your skill set improves, you naturally just can't service that lower end of the market.
Yeah, and you know what? There are so many good agencies out there that can. And the thing is, the one interesting thing that I've learned about like an agency is that you have to wrap around your client's business, so you can't possibly be everything to everyone. There are certain categories like of business that we do really well. Other categories not so well. Certain size of business that we do really well. Others not so well. And that's just a lesson that I guess I've learned over the years.
That's cool. Let's talk about the sales process now. So initially it was very much cold outreach, etc. Now you're talking about, is it coming through all inbound to you, or are you guys still doing a lot of that outreach strategy?
Because we've got such a small, there are only so many heads of digital. Sorry, mate?
I lost you there for like 2 seconds. Can you just repeat that last bit?
I said, we do get a lot of inbound, but it by no means we still have to do outbound stuff. So because we have a very sort of small community in the sense of, that there are only so many heads of digital and CMOs of, kind of like enterprise level clients, we go to the right events, we publish articles to the right, blogs and article sites. We very much, I guess our business development is getting our thinking out there. And when someone likes what it is that we're talking about, we start a conversation with them. Now, those conversations, the thing that, when we started, our sales cycle could be anywhere from 3 days to maybe max a month. Our sales cycles now to win a large full service, digital retainer or a media retainer, that can go from anywhere from 3 months to 24 months. So it's our business development life sort of like strategy has changed. We're in market talking to a lot of brands that we will not have a chance of doing business with, for the next 12 months. But we're having these conversations where, we're trying to add value where we can, because we know that eventually when their like media does come up for tender, we're going to be in the mix.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So what kind of place are you publishing articles in, and what kind of events are you trying to attend?
It's stuff like Mumbrella, BNT, Power Retail, because we do a lot of work in retail. Just sort of publications that are kind of read by Australian, marketing stakeholders.
That's cool. So a lot of publishing, a lot of events. You doing any email in that mix as well through outreach?
Yeah. We use HubSpot. So, we've got a kind of like our segmented email list. Like we've got our prospects and we send them like, some of our thinking at intervals. In terms of, so did you ask about events?
Yeah, talking about the events.
So we do a mixture of the big events like, your ad techs and your CXO summits and things like we were just up in the Gold Coast for iMedia Brand Summit. We do those events, but we also do our own events. Like we do things like boardroom lunches. So we get like 15 to 20, digital leaders in a room, and we kind of do a round table discussion, pay for their lunch, and that helps us drum up some business too. We do a lot of partner events with like Google. We did an event, the 2018 Attainable Innovation Summit we did a couple of months ago in Sydney. So yeah, events are a major, major driver for us because, again, it's just being face to face with people. Like most of our team, they're so passionate. Like they just can't help themselves. They'll meet someone and they'll just start talking and about what it is they're passionate about. Whether it's kind of like voice SEO or media personalization or the latest in kind of like data management platforms. Like, and inevitably people get interested in what it is we're talking about at these events.
It's that really helps us in that kind of environment.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned that the last 12 months have been pretty meteoric in terms of growth. I think you said doubled in size. What would you say has attributed to that?
So, I mean, the sort of the bottom of funnel reason is what we've won. We've had a couple of key client wins. But, if you go back sort of 2 to 3 years, we were probably laying the foundations of that 2 to 3 years ago by hiring really smart people. Like, I can't stress enough that in agency land, you live and die by the quality of your people. It's not how nice your office is. It's not how well branded your agency is. It's all about the quality of your people. So we kind of had a bit of a shift in mentality 2 to 3 years ago where we said, look, we're going to potentially in the short term sacrifice some of our I guess, profits, invest in people. So we bought some pretty senior talent on from, some of the larger agencies in Australia, brought them over to us as a plucky independent. And that's kind of probably now 2-3 years later paid dividends. And, we're doing it again. We're on a sort of a big senior talent hunt at the moment.
Okay. What's your approach to hiring? How do you find these right people? How do you know that they are the right fit for your culture and for where you guys want to go?
Holy shit, that's like $1 million question. Look, we've made a lot of mishires. So I felt the pain of having someone literally bullshit me as to what it is they can do and what it is they're about throughout an interview process, then having them land in my business and being able to deliver on none of what it is they said that they're going to do. So, our interview process has become pretty robust. So it's a mixture of, for the average kind of client-facing role, so be it a, account manager or someone in BDM or you do things like psychometric tests. We do a lot of psychometric testing. So we, test things like, someone's verbal reasoning, numerical reasoning, ability to work under pressure. We do some personality profile testing. We put them through a pretty robust technical test just to see how they, what is their digital knowledge like for the area in which that they're applying in. We do really, really thorough background checks. So, people give you references, but, the people we're hiring generally they come from reputable agencies. Having the luxury of a good network will help us ask questions of various people. Say, hey, have you worked with this person? We do really robust, background checks to say, yep, this person's actually good, or no, they're not good. We also work with a really few select specialist digital recruiters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Within all that, you kind of mentioned, what is your revenue model here? So is it purely retainer type contracts, project contracts, or do you have other stuff in that mix?
Most of our stuff, we don't really do the kind of equity model or the profit share model. It's just not something that we're interested in. Most of it is time and materials, mostly on retainer. I mean, with the media stuff, you just generally make a percentage of spend. But it's nothing fancy. We do what we do is we have a standard kind of agreement but then we have almost like a performance-related retainer, or performance-related incentive. So maybe it's like if we're managing your media, we'll say, great, there's a baseline of 8% of your spend that we get, but if we hit certain KPIs, it goes up to 9% or 10% for that month.
Okay, that's cool.
So we really want to make sure that we align like our remuneration with our kind of commercial performance for our clients.
I think it's sort of been one of the biggest gripes I've had with big agencies in the past. They've had those remuneration structures that don't necessarily align with the business. You're incentivized to spend without really making that return. So that makes a lot of sense that you guys have those KPIs in place.
Absolutely. It's actually like, the big agencies, like everyone's eating their lunch, everyone from like independents like us to the consultancies like Deloitte and PwC. Yeah, I won't go into that. It's a whole nother rant in and of itself, but, yeah, there hasn't been as much innovation, with things like commercial models, and it's a lot of the bigger brands are kind of waking up and saying, okay, like, you've got these agencies like us and hundreds of other plucky independents that, will work harder for them, that will kind of put skin in their game. We'll make sure that, hey, we're not just here to, punch the clock and bill you for hours. We're actually vested in, your commercial outcomes, and we're willing to put our billing on the line for that.
That's cool. That is really cool. So putting that in place, it sounds really exciting. What else do you see as future opportunities? Is more hire more people, grow, or is there something you see changing next year?
I'll tell you what it's a medium to long term thing. So, GMG, as I mentioned, stands for Google Maps Gurus. We evolved from just a Google Maps optimization agency. We became GMG Digital. The interesting thing over the next 2 to 3 to maybe 5 years is that everything is now digital. So, you can buy billboards digitally. You can buy TV media digitally. So the thing that was once a category of marketing, digital marketing, is now becoming just marketing. So that presents in and of itself a really interesting opportunity / hurdle that means that, we're going to lose our kind of specialist badge. We just have to become, we have to present ourselves as a holistic marketing solution, which, that involves us changing some of the way we tell our stories and the way that we represent our brand. But I think that's probably the future. It's about, agencies like us that are already comfortable with kind of the digital landscape, just further growing, further capitalizing on the fact that everything is becoming digitized, everything, all media, creative, all that, and just pushing that advantage. But yeah, all the stuff like more people, more clients, all that stuff, that's all part of it. But I think that, I'm very interested to see how that whole, like, when everything becomes digital, is digital still going to be a word that people put in their offerings, or how's that going to be represented? I think like the agencies that can jump that gap, or the digital agencies that can jump gap, will be really successful.
I think it's interesting. Whilst we are going digital, a lot of people still have no idea what's going on in the digital world, especially big businesses. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting conversation to have and see.
yeah, it really is. I mean, it's, I also think though, like I don't know, like I don't know about yourself or your listeners, but like I'm in my 30s. I'm seeing now guys my age getting to like higher up on when they're working in brands and organizations. They're becoming like the heads of digital, and they're slowly becoming the CMOs, and they are turning around these big businesses and saying, hey, the previous, my predecessor was potentially not as interested in digital, but I am, because I grew up with it. So as our assuming we're sort of a similar age, but as our kind of generation gets a bit older, and gets into these positions of strategic power. Sorry?
I'm hearing it happening a lot more, that the CMOs and heads of digital for major brands are coming in at their 30s and...
Yeah, because, I mean, they're eminently qualified. They're like...
Change of guards.
Digital natives, hate that word, but like it's true. Like they use digital, it affects their lives. It's not conceptual. Like they're on Instagram, they're on Snapchat, they're interacting with these assets in a practical manner. Whereas if you're in your 50s, you may not be as embedded with these, with the kind of the digital world around you.
How about yourself? Do you find yourself going on Instagram, Snapchat, all that kind of stuff, or?
Man, so I love the digital world. I mean, like, I'm not as big on the socials, but love my online gaming. Just like to me, it's like that I can just like when I feel up for it, I can just spend 2-3 hours and just kill it playing FIFA or Rocket League, and play with people from all over Australia. That's just awesome. Like digital does that, and and I have that tangible appreciation for it. Or my mates that have found their future wives off Tinder. That's cool. 10 years ago or maybe 20 years ago, if you didn't have the confidence to approach a chick at a bar, you'd be fucked. But now you've got Tinder.
Swipe right.
Tinder does that, and I mean that's all digital. So, I guess it fundamentally influences the way we live our lives. So, there's just so much opportunity going forward for brands to just do more with it.
Do you see yourself going into any other businesses in the next few years, or is it?
If you asked me that question 4 years ago, I would have said no, because I would have 100% been very I'm one of those, I'm not good at multitasking. Mm-hmm. But having said that, there's, I've been involved with a couple of other ventures. I'm doing some stuff in esports, and, the one thing I will say is that, I reckon that there's going to be some very talented people in GMG that eventually go off and want to start their own thing. And I think by me being where I am, I'm going to be able to help them. So potentially invest in them, mentor them. And, I already worked with them, so they're a proven entity. Maybe be involved in other businesses with other people that I've sort of worked with and trust.
Which is almost an incubator accidentally in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, we end up hiring very the E-type, the entrepreneur type, because we're a very dynamic environment. You really need to be, have a sort of a predisposition for problem solving. So, it's not unusual that a lot of people leave our walls and start their own businesses.
Tell me a bit more about when you said problem solving. What kind of problems are you solving on a day-to-day basis?
Oh man, everything. You
guys often find fires that you put out, or?
Sorry?
Are there often fires that need to be put out, or is it more kind of logistical kind of stuff?
All the time. Fires. When you're dealing with people, fires are inevitable because human nature is such. But when I say problem solving, that often has a negative connotation, but it's a lot of these things are opportunities. We've got clients for example, 13 Cabs, who are, Australia's largest taxi provider. They are literally in a process in an industry that's being disrupted by, your Ubers and your Olas and your DDs and that. So, we have to figure out or help them figure out, how to survive and thrive through that, all the way through to more more operational problems, when you are an independent agency, with such a complex hiring process, and you do win a new client, sometimes there's a case of we're under resourced. You say, go ahead, well, you've taken on a big retainer and you've got to bring on 5 people in a space of a month, but you don't want to compromise on your hiring process. So that sometimes is a challenge. You've got to figure out, okay, where can we bring people in? Who can work a bit extra? How do we solve those resource gaps?
That's really awesome. Nick, if there is anything else that you want to leave audiences with before we end this call, what kind of advice would you give to someone, I guess?
Let's
put it this way. Let me rephrase that question. If you were to start again today, what would you be doing?
If I knew what I knew,
if you knew what you know now, and you had to start fresh,
I'd do exactly the same thing. I'd do exactly the same thing. I'd probably even make some of the same mistakes again, shamefully. But like to go back to your original question, what do I kind of want to leave people with? Because it's sort of going on this journey. I've learned that you can't fake desire. Like I mentioned, I think when we were chatting earlier, Joss, I mentioned a book that I read, Think and Grow Rich. Somewhat of a misleading title, but anyone that's serious in business needs to read this book. And there's one of the early chapters in the book is about desire, and basically, desire is it's your fuel. It's it's going to ultimately get you through everything that there is to get you through in business or not. So, I guess the one thing I want to leave people with is be realistic about what it is that you want. Because if you don't want something bad enough, then you're not going to pay the price to get it. You're not going to do the late nights. You're not going to go through the stress. You're not going to go through the heartache. And that's okay. It just means that don't understand the level at which you want to play at with your natural desire and go for it.
Mate, it has been epic. Thank you for joining us on the show. And if people do want to connect with you further and learn more about, even, see what it takes to join the GMG team, where can they go and what's the best way to connect with you personally?
So my email is just nick@gmgdigital.com.au. Anyone wants to chat about digital, more than happy to. You can hit us up through our Facebook page. That's or you can find me on LinkedIn, Nick Grinberg, Grinberg.
Epic. All right, guys.
Awesome, mate.
Until next time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Cheers, Joss.
See you all next episode.